This is a topic I've wanted to discuss for a long time. I've teased it in other videos, I've tweeted about it, but I've just never gotten around to actually talking about my gun collection. And frankly, this is the last chance I'm probably going to have because trying to downsize a bit, actually quite a lot. Um, I've got 5 guns that I'm immediately looking to sell, and so yeah, I won't ever have a chance to talk about them. I've already got 2 good offers on a couple of them. Offers I'm probably going to take, um, and a couple more pending. Got some interest in. So we'll see where that goes. Hopefully, I'll be able to blow them out real quick and free up some cash because I got to buy a new car this spring. I got BronyCan in August, and I really goddamn want to go to TFCon this July. So if I can free up all the money I can from these, then that'll be enough to put down a sizable down payment on a vehicle and still have enough left for both trips. In addition to what savings I'll come up with over the next 4 or 5 months before each of those conventions. Because at the moment I'm working out of the office at the construction company I work at, so I'm not making the same kind of money that I normally do most of the year when I'm out in the field doing my 60+ hour weeks. So saving is a little more challenging these days, but once I'm back out in the field, I've got a budget worked out, and I should be able to, just based on that, I should be able to just afford BronyCan. But if I can free up all this money, then that'll make my budget a lot more flexible, and we'll see what happens. But without further ado, let's take a little gander at some of these things. We are going to start off with my most recent acquisition. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 19 revolver. This was acquired by my uncle. He had some legal troubles about 2 years ago and lost his firearms license as a result. So myself being the only member of the family that had a restricted level license, he sold it to me for safekeeping. It's chambered in .357 Magnum. It's similar to the Dirty Harry Special. That was the Model 29 in .44. This is the 19 in .357. But it's still a very hefty, very large, sturdy handgun. I've never shot it. I've only had it for about 3 months. I've been meaning to get out to the range with it. Just haven't had the chance, but it's a fun little unit to just play around with, and everybody loves to spin the chamber like that. You can always tell, incidentally, in movies when a sound designer doesn't know much about guns when they always put in that little whirring sound effect when someone spins the chamber. Which this thing has no ratchet in the chamber. The ratchet is built into the frame of the firearm. But it's a single action and double action, so you can cock the hammer for a very, very shockingly light trigger pull, or you can leave the hammer down for a very heavy trigger pull. Like I said, I've never fired it. It's I'm eager to, but it is what it is, so I can't really speak much for it in that capacity. But it's heavy. It's all heavy-duty steel, very old-fashioned, and I just like handling it. It's a neat little gun. Next up, if any of you are familiar with the Metal Gear Solid series, you might recognize this as the SOCOM 45. This is a very rare handgun. This is the H&K Mark 23. I'm a schmuck, and I bought it just because it's the gun that Solid Snake uses in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, and is available in 4 if you know where to look. I bought it about 2.5 years ago. Barely ever had a chance to shoot it. It's brilliant though. It is a tack driver, man. This thing is like incredibly. This thing is way more accurate than I am. It's very heavy though. Fully loaded, this thing weighs about 3 or 4 pounds, and if it has the laser aiming module and the suppressor attached, as it was intended when it was designed as a military handgun, fully loaded, this thing weighs about 6 or 7 pounds, which is like as much as like a small rifle. So it's pretty ridiculous. But it's a semi-automatic pistol. Very heavy duty, very sturdy, has similar mechanical function, similar ergonomics to a classic 1911 pistol, but upgraded for modern usage. It's same as the Smith. It's a single and double action, so if the hammer cocked, it's got a very light trigger pull, but if the hammer is down, you can work it that way, but it's got a much heavier trigger pull. One thing I do like about this thing is it has a hammer drop safety, a decocker. If you pull this little switch, it'll drop the hammer safely with no risk of firing it if it's cocked. But you can always simply hold your thumb against it, pull the trigger, and drop it manually. It's a very sturdy gun. I like it a lot, but this is one of the ones I have up for sale. Because I paid way too much money for this thing back in 2012. Retail in Canada was, I think I paid like $2,300 for it. And I could sell it. I've already got an offer for 16. I'm holding out for 18. Hopefully I'll get it, but I'll take 16 just fine, because I mean that's $1,600 that I wouldn't otherwise have. But I'm gonna miss it when I let it go, but I haven't shot it in 2 years, so what's the point really? It's a solid steel upper machined upper slide with a reinforced polymer frame to reduce weight, but because of the size of it, because of the weight of the slide and the barrel and all the other internals, it remains a very heavy handgun. And when fully loaded, the magazine has a 10-round capacity. Yeah, this thing is a heavy, heavy, heavy piece of hardware. But god damn is it fun to shoot. Next up, and that's it for handguns. We're going to start taking a look at some of my rifles now. This particular rifle is a piece of my family's history. This is a clone of a Ooooh rifle. It's a .22 caliber bolt action, purely single shot, has no magazine. So every time you want to fire it, you've got to chamber around, cock it, chamber it. You got to cock it manually, fire, decock it. Extract the spent casing. The extractor on this one still works, but many of them they wear out very quickly. Chamber a fresh round and reload. So there is no magazine. So every time you want to fire, you literally have to load a round one at a time. It's extremely annoying, but hey, you know, that's just, it's a cheap, very, very simple rifle. It's got like 15 moving parts, and that's it. Actually, probably less than that. And it comes apart. You know, you unscrew this little screw right here on the bottom. Barrel comes off. The bolt comes out super easy. This thing was sitting on a shelf in my parents' house when I was a kid, and I always wanted to play with it. Like, it was just on the top shelf on a rack somewhere where I couldn't get my hands on it, and whenever my parents were away, I always tried to climb that shelf, but I could never get very high because it wasn't a very sturdy shelf. and I couldn't reach it. I always wanted to get my hands on it. My dad wouldn't let me, even without it being loaded. Like, he just wouldn't let me even touch it. And then when the new firearms laws came into effect in Canada in 1994, I believe, requiring any firearm owner to be licensed and for their weapons to be registered, my dad stashed it. And it was hidden away in a closet until I got my license, and I just kind of took it because, well, I'm the only member of the family that legally can own it. I wouldn't want my dad to get in trouble for, not being licensed and having a weapon hanging around the house, because that could get him in a lot of trouble. But that's pretty much all there is to say about this. It's just I've only taken it out once to shoot it, but it's been in my family since at least 1970, probably longer. It was given to my dad by my grandfather, my mother's father, who incidentally was the founder of the company that I work for. And I work currently with his grandson, my cousin, who is the owner of the company now. So it's a third-generation family-run business. They're all hunters. So this originally came from the owner of the company, or the founder of the company that I work for. So, nice little bit of family history there. Now, the very first firearm that I bought when I got my firearms license back in 2012, if you were to look at it now and compare it to what it looked like the day I bought it, you probably would barely recognize it. That is because I have done some very extensive modifications to it externally. Functionally, it's still exactly like it was, but externally, very, very different. This started life as a Russian surplus SKS rifle in 7.62 by 39, standard wood stock, conventional wrist on the stock, much like the last rifle I just showed. But aside from the internal mechanics, virtually externally, nearly everything about this thing has changed. I've replaced the stock. This is based on the Dragunov sniper rifle, which is based on an AK-47. Interesting little bit of familial history with the AK-47. It was loosely based on the SKS and replaced it, in fact, in military service. So this design, the SKS, is kind of the grandfather of the AK and the modern Soviet-style assault rifle. But this thing is a beauty to shoot. I've only taken it out in this configuration a couple of times. But like I said, I've replaced the stock. I added this folding bipod, so it's a very stable platform for shooting, and this scope rail on the top. I've been trying to find some kind of solution for mounting a scope or a red dot sight on this thing forever, but couldn't ever come up with anything satisfactory, because the way this thing is chambered, the way they're designed is when a round ejects, it ejects straight up. Usually rounds eject out to the side, but for some reason Simonov, the company that I believe that designed the SKS, designed the shells to eject straight up. So if you had a scope mounted somewhere back here, the shells would bang into the bottom of the objective end. So what a lot of people have done is the gas tube here at the front you can replace with something that has a scope rail on it. I tried that. I didn't like it. Not to mention it took hours to get the thing to fit, because the gas piston inside was the wrong, wasn't matched for that particular gas tube. So I had to file down the gas tube to make it fit, and even then, it didn't work properly because they weren't matched for each other. That's the thing about the SKS, is that they were made on such a low budget. They're very much like the AK-47. They'll fire through anything. The tolerances, the mechanical tolerances, are very broad. So it doesn't require like that 100% mechanical precision like you might expect. They'll fire dirty. They'll fire with dirt in them, with the gas tube all gunked up. I've heard stories of AK-47s being pulled out of the mud after like 6 months or a year, given a very basic cleaning and then just fired empty, because that they're designed for that, and this was as well. But I'm getting off topic here. I was trying to explain how I figured out the scope rail problem. This part here, this is the gas or the dust cover on the rear of the Action. At one point, I replaced this. They do make these that have a scope rail built into them, and I tried that, and I liked it. It was okay, but it was really cumbersome to clean, and every time you took it off, you had to recalibrate your scope. So eventually, I found out about this. This is a complete rail that replaces the forward sight and attaches on the rear block. So it's a full-length rail, and it also acts as a shell deflector. So the shells, instead of shooting straight up, now hit the bottom of this rail and will bounce out to the side. At least that's the idea. I've had this in this configuration like this for over a year, and I have not yet had a chance to shoot it. But I've heard very, very good reviews from people who have done this modification, and I'm very eager to actually get out to try it. But with this stock on it, though, and with a detachable box magazine rather than the internal magazine, and with the bipod and all the other modifications that I have, shot this thing in this configuration, this thing is a lot of fun. It's really easy to handle. It's a bit heavy, but it's very well balanced. So it's not front heavy like the next gun I'm going to talk about. That thing, wow! If you don't have that thing in a stable on a stable platform, like if you're not shooting from a bench rest position, that thing will tilt forward like crazy on you. But this thing is very, very sturdy, very well balanced, and I like it a lot. Like I said, I mean, if you were to look at the pictures of this thing when it was new compared to what it looks like now, like, it's almost unrecognizable. You can call me a Bubba if you want. I mean, that's the nickname for people who do all kinds of tactical modifications to their firearms. But I just wanted something that was a little more comfortable to shoot, because the standard configuration, the shoulder stock was just too short. But I like this thing. Soviet SKS all bubbaed up. This thing. This is the other one I'm going to show you that I've got for sale right now. This is a Robinson Arms XCR. More specifically, an XCR-L. This was my baby. This, I know you might be thinking this thing, it looks like an AR-15 or an M16 or whatever, and that's kind of by design. Robinson Arms was participating in a U.S. military-sponsored a rifle competition to design a new military tactical rifle for the U.S. Army. And they were disqualified on a technicality, but they decided, instead of scrapping all of their designs, that they would market it for civilian use. Now, I don't think it was very popular in the United States, because in the U.S., I mean, you can buy an AR-15. You can buy any kind of tactical rifle. You can buy an AK-47, for God's sake. Semi-automatic, unless you have the legal means to get your hands on something that's full auto. But in the U.S., the laws are much more open. In Canada, they're extremely restricted, and the AR-15 is a restricted, classified firearm. I think they were originally going to classify it as prohibited, but because of the lobby from competitive shooters, they were able to get it made classified as restricted as opposed to prohibited. Which, if it's prohibited, when licenses were issued in the early 90s, if you had a prohibited classified firearm, they would issue you a prohibited classified license, but they do not issue them anymore. So, pretty much, when it comes to prohibited firearms, it's impossible to get them now. And they go for stupid amounts of money. But because this was a new rifle design inspired by the AR-15, but not having anything mechanically to do with it, like the internals are completely different, just externally they resemble each other, this was classified as non-restricted. And as a non-restricted weapon, you can take this hunting, you can keep it in the back of your car, you don't have to have any additional paperwork, you don't have to register it, you can take it anywhere. I could throw this in a case in the back of my car and drive across country with it and not get hassled. I mean, if you got pulled over and a police officer saw it in the back of your car, you know, they'd say, oh, can you open the case and show it to me? They might think, oh, that's an AR-15, but no, all you got to do is show them XCRL, and you might have to Google for them to prove that it's a non-restricted weapon, but they'd let you go. You know, you wouldn't get in any kind of trouble for having this thing in your car. However, if you had a restricted level firearm, a handgun or an AR-15 or one of the other dozens of arbitrarily designated restricted firearms, the law in Canada is that if you have one of those in your car, you'd better be going to a range directly. Don't even stop at Tim Hortons or anything. Go straight to the range. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200, or you're going to get in some really big trouble if you get caught. But as a non-restricted weapon, you can shoot this anywhere. Well, reasonably anywhere. You can take it hunting. You can, drive to any range, anywhere, anytime. No hassle, no paperwork. And that's why they're so popular in Canada. Because you don't need to... Like, if you want to have a tactical style rifle, this is kind of the way to go. But they are expensive. These retail new for between $2,500 and $3,000. But now, like I said, this is called an XCR. XCR stands for Exchangeable Caliber Rifle, meaning that by swapping out the barrel, by swapping out the bolt, and a couple of other little parts, you can convert this to one of, I think, 4 different calibers. Such as, this one is chambered in .223, which is the same round as an AR-15 or M16 fires. But it can also be changed out to 7.62 by 39, which is the same round the AK-47 and my SKS fires. 6.8 SPC, which is a very rare caliber, but fairly large size bullet, very accurate and commonly used for hunting, I believe. And then I think there's 1 or 2 other calibers that you can swap it out to. But there's also an XCR-M, which is, I believe, only at the moment available in .308, which is a 30 caliber bullet. The bullet itself is the same size as the 7.62 by 39, except the cartridge is longer. So the frame of the rifle is a little bit bigger because it requires a larger mag well, larger chamber, etc. But I believe there's been plans to release that version in several different calibers, but it just has not yet come to fruition. Now, this rifle I've done some modifications to. Nothing quite as extensive as with my SKS, but I've added a few little features. The optics here, this is an EOTech EXPS3 short version red dot sight, and their flip-to-side magnifier. I first learned that these existed in one of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games, and fell in love with it. I liked the idea of having just the standard red dot for close range, but also the magnifier, which push a little switch and it just flips over, so you've got clear access to just the red dot. But the magnifier has no reticle. It lines up with the red dot to act as the crosshairs. The buttstock I have replaced. Originally it was equipped with something called a fast stock. It's a nice design, but I wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't quite long enough for me. I've got long arms, and my length of pull is quite long. So I replaced it with this adapter to accept an AR-15 styled buffer tube and buttstock, and I've got a sling mount here, so I can attach a single point sling. In addition, I changed out the hand grip with one from a company called Magpul. The original hand grip was a little bit small. I don't have huge hands, but I like the idea of having something with a little bit more positive texture to it. And these ones are modifiable. You can swap out the back strap or the front strap with larger palm and finger swells. Not to mention this one has like a good deep finger groove. And the high rise on the back strap cuts down on fatigue on the webbing between your thumb and forefinger. So it's a very good, very solid grip. And finally, the foregrip here, the vertical foregrip, also functions as a bipod. So when shooting from bench rest, this thing is a very, very stable platform, but it's also functional as a close quarters weapon. That was essentially how I configured it, as a what's called a DMR, a designated marksman's rifle. So with the red dot and the magnifier, it's ranged out accurate to about 300, 400 yards. It's been a while since I've measured it out, but flip the magnifier over and just the red dot, and you've got yourself a decent close quarters firing platform. It's not optimal. As I mentioned when I was talking about the SKS, this thing is very, very front heavy. The barrel shroud here, the whole quad rail mechanism on the front here, is all heavy machined aluminum. So it adds a lot of weight to the front of this thing. Not to mention the T-pod itself adds a lot of weight to the front of this thing. And the barrel, wow. This barrel weighs like 3 pounds on its own. And this is the heavy barrel version. There is a light barrel version. They're hard to come by, and the replacement parts are very expensive. And since I'm planning to sell this thing, it's not worth my time to track down a replacement. But yeah, all of this conspires to make this thing a very, very front-heavy weapon. So firing while standing is not optimal, but if you're firing from bench rest, it's great. I remember taking this thing out one time to a range. I had set up as targets some 4-inch Star Wars action figures, and I had them set up at about 50 yards. Not super far, but they're very small targets. I was popping headshots on every one of them. That is how accurate this thing is. Even at that, like I said, it wasn't huge range, but if you take the scale into effect, I mean the equivalent scale would be probably a couple hundred yards, but it was really cool walking out to collect the pieces and finding shattered heads and missing arms and shredded torsos. I just wish I had a Jar Jar figure I could have shot instead of couple of clone troopers. Anyway, so that's pretty much all there is to say about my XCR. This is one of my guns I've got for sale. As I said, retail, I paid about $2,700 for it. In this configuration with the buttstock, with the hand grip, with the optics, I've probably paid about $4,000, maybe a little bit more for this, but realistically, I'm expecting I can probably get about $3,200. I'm hoping for more, but I'll take what I can get. But it's a beautiful, beautiful gun, and I'm gonna miss it. I really will. I mean, I haven't shot this thing in 2 years, but it is a dream. I love shooting this thing, but it should really go to a home that's going to feed it, unlike me, because I just don't have the time or anywhere to take it. But oh, I'm gonna miss you. And last but not least, this is my other baby. This is my baby I'm not selling. This is my 1022. It is a Ruger. It started life as a conventional standard rifle. 1022 is a very, very popular plinking rifle. Not much use for hunting, being just a 22 caliber. The caliber's too low for anything but maybe like gophers or anything. But for me, it's just I like the idea of just target shooting with it. I've replaced the stock. I've done that on a lot of my rifles, mostly because, as I said with my XCR, I have very long arms. Largely because I'm just very tall. I'm 6'7", so naturally my arms are longer. So a standard length of pull on a rifle, especially a 22, which they're made for everybody, just wasn't long enough for me. My arms were just in an uncomfortably close position. So I opted to replace the stock with something with a collapsible stock with a little bit more length on it. I also like the pistol grip. I prefer rifles with pistol grips over the standard angled wrist. Other than the stock, though, this particular rifle has seen quite a lot of modification. I added the scope, which is a variable 4 to 9 magnification, or sorry, 3 to 9x magnification. And with this thing on, holy jeez, this thing is accurate. I've hit a tennis ball at 300 yards consistently and repeatedly with this thing. That was before doing any other modifications to the internals. I've replaced the bolt with a very expensive, very high quality bolt. I've polished up the internals so that everything flows, the action moves very, very smoothly. I've replaced the entire trigger group and the hammer, and basically everything but the springs and the screws inside this trigger frame have been replaced. As a result, it has an extremely light trigger pull. Oh, safety's on. There. Normally, a trigger pull on a rifle like this would be about 3 to 4 pounds. This is down to about 1.5 pounds. Not to mention, it has an over-travel stop. So this little screw you might be able to make out hanging out the bottom end of that trigger is to stop you from pulling it too far. So you know, when it breaks, like when the trigger releases, it's called braking. That's where it stops. It stops immediately after braking, and then you release it and it resets, and you can fire much more rapidly with not quite so much finger or trigger travel. So it's a fairly minor thing, but it makes a lot of difference when you're firing rapid fire large magazines. One thing I like about the 22 caliber is that because it's a rimfire round, I won't go into the difference between rimfire and centerfire. Just suffice to say, this is a rimfire round. This fires a rimfire round. Laws in Canada have no restrictions on magazine capacity on rimfire rifles. They do on pistols, and centerfire rifles and pistols have round restrictions, but rimfire rifles do not. So you can use the conventional 10-round internal box magazine, or you can get 25-round banana magazines. You can get 100-round drum magazines. If you could make a magazine that could take 2,000 rounds, you could fire it legally, and nobody could say anything about it. So that's why these are so much fun to plink with. You can just, shoulder them and just fire until your heart's content. Fire until your trigger finger falls off. But like I said right off the bat, this is my other baby. This was the second gun that I bought after getting my license. And I've probably put 2,000 rounds through it. And that's without having shot it a single time in nearly 2 years. I love taking this thing out. I would love to be able to take it out more often. Since I put the new stock on it, since I upgraded the internals, I've fired it maybe 200 times. But I could already see the difference. In fact, I don't even think I've fired it since I put the new bolt in it. because this bolt I bought for another 1022 rifle that I have, which is their takedown model. That one is otherwise unmodified besides some replacement trigger parts. This bolt I originally bought for that rifle because I wanted a 22 that I could keep when I was living up in Lac La Biche when I didn't have this, because I couldn't keep it anywhere. So I wanted a takedown because it was compact and easy to stash, because I wasn't allowed to have firearms where I was living. Not that stopped me. But when I decided I was going to sell that one, it's one of my guns up for sale. I actually decided I was going to sell it like a year ago and just never got around to until now. But I pulled that bolt out and put it into here because this is a much higher quality. It's more properly machined. The standard bolt has a lot of texture, a lot of grittiness texture to it, as did the inside of the receiver. So that was the first thing that I did when I decided to put this in here was I polished up the internals, as I showed. I just took like some heavy grit sandpaper and smoothed it down, and then progressively finer and finer and finer sandpaper, and then switched over to a buffing cloth with some polishing compound, and man, does that inside shine. And so, as a result, the action on this thing is just deadly smooth, you know. I would find that, especially when using the larger 25 round magazines, they would jam fairly frequently. But when I had this bolt in the other rifle, I did the same thing to it. I polished it up the same way. The 25 round magazines never jammed a single time. It never happened. So while, like I said, I haven't shot it with this bolt in it, I think that I can say the same thing, that once I get a 25 rounder in it, it's going to shoot just brilliant and smooth. And I can't wait to. So I'm hoping I might be able to make it out to a decent outdoor long-range shooting facility sometime this spring, but fingers are crossed. We'll see. So that's where I'm going to leave it. That's, I think, all I'm going to talk about for today. I have a couple of other pistols. I have a 9mm, kind of a not a Glock clone, but similar mechanical function to a Glock, and a 22 caliber pistol, both of which are for sale. There's nothing really interesting about them. I have a couple of other rifles. I have another bolt action rimfire rifle in a round called 17 HMR that I don't really know much about. I've only taken it out to shoot it once. I've put maybe 50 rounds through it, and it doesn't have a scope on it right now. I have an AR-15, Chinese clone by a company called Norinco. It's a piece of crap. There's a reason why most AR clones, AR-15 clones, M16 clones, whatever, most of them sell in North America for $1,500 to $2,000. There's a reason why this one cost me $650. It's kind of a piece of garbage. Oh my God, what a waste of money that thing was. And, you know, like some of these, I've done some modifications to it. You know, I've changed out the foregrip, so instead of just having like the standard hand grip, I got a rail system on it. I got a red dot sight on it, new rear flip up sight, some other modifications. And Jesus Christ, is that thing a piece of crap. I'd taken it out to shoot it once, and it would jam like every second round, every second or third round. Oh my God, I just want to throw it in the trash. But it looks nice, you know, stubby barrel, very compact, fully tactical, has, you know, none of the problems of my XCR being so front heavy. You know, this thing is compact and lightweight, and if it would shoot decently, would be just an absolute joy, but it doesn't. You know, I hate it, and I want to get rid of it. But I don't know how. You know, I don't know how to just dispose of a rifle. It's a restricted level rifle, so I can't just give it away. I got to go through the proper channels and make sure that it's disposed of properly. So I might just call the RCMP and ask them what their procedure is for disposal of restricted firearms. Other than that, yeah, I think I got like one other rifle hiding in there somewhere that I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. But I kind of wanted to leave it to, stuff that has a story. Stuff that has like either some personal meaning or some history or something I've done some modifications to or something that's special to me. My XCR, I'm gonna miss that thing like crazy. That was my first big ticket purchase. God, the story of how I bought that thing. Oh man, there's a gun shop here in Edmonton called P&D Enterprises. They're located just near Chinatown, just north of downtown. Great shop. Been there a million times. Really helpful people. I checked their website one day. Now, I had first heard of an XCR because I was at the shooting range with my 1022, and just this guy was like the next shooting bay over, and he was firing his XCR, and I asked him about it, and he let me put a couple of rounds through it, and wow, this is a really nice rifle. What would it cost? Like, well, $2,700, and the optic, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm going to have to try and get my hands on one of these. So when I moved up to Lac La Biche that summer, I started saving and I got my hands on one, or I tracked one down at this store P&D. They had one, and I came into the city for that weekend, and they're only open Saturdays on the weekend, so they're closed Sunday. So I only had Saturday to track this thing down. So I go into the store and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have it, but it's out at the casino for the gun show." Out in Enoch, which is about 20 minutes west of Edmonton. It's an Indian casino. It's called the River Cree. So I drive all the way out there, and I go to so I can check out the gun show, and they're like, "Oh, the place has been evacuated. There's a methane leak or some kind of toxic gas leak, so they had to close the entire place down." Like, the hotel, the casino, the gun show, everything. Everyone was out in the parking lot, just freaking out. So I turned around. I called P&D, and I asked them what I could do because I really wanted this thing, and I didn't want to miss my chance to get it. And Saturday was my only chance to get it. They said that they didn't know if the casino was going to be open again before the end of the day. So I drove back into the city, killed a little time, went to West Edmonton Mall, went to a movie, I think, and called P&D from there and asked them if the casino was open again, and they said no. So I drove to P&D to say, "Can I put down a deposit? Is there any way maybe I could meet somebody here tomorrow, when you're technically not open, but this is a big ticket purchase, can I come in anyway and buy this thing?" And so I never got a chance, though, to ask that, because when I get there, I overheard someone saying, "Oh, the casino's open again." So there we go, drive all the way back, and from P&D to the casino, it's about 40 minutes. The casino is about 20 minutes from the west end of Edmonton, and P&D is downtown. So it's about 45 minutes drive there. So I'm back and forth and back and forth. So I finally get to the casino. I finally go in. I go to the show floor, and I'm wandering around for like half an hour just trying to find P&D's booth. And someone from the store had called and asked them to put the XCR on hold for me. And I get there, and I take a look at it, and I asked them what kind of deal they can give me, and they said, "Well, we can't really knock the price down any, but we can throw in a case of ammo." So they threw in, I think, 500 rounds of .223, which was nice. And so, yeah, the retail with tax, I forget what I paid. But I went to run my debit card, and I knew I had enough money on my account, and it was declined. Huh? What? So I call my bank, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you have a limit of like $1,000 per day in debit transactions." I'm like, "Oh, okay. That's news to me. Well, can you make an exception? Can you bump my limit up for this one transaction? Like, well, what's it for? I'm like, it was a girl on the other end, and I'm like freaking out if I told her what it was that she'd say no, and I'm like, and I say, well, it's a gun. He's like, oh, is it like an antique? It's like, no, it's just a really expensive rifle. It's like, oh, okay. I hear her typing away, and 10 seconds later she says, yeah, okay, I've cleared you for a higher limit for the day. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I run it, and it clears, and the rifle came with a case and, like I said, a box of ammunition. And I was very excited and very nervous, and this was like the most expensive thing I'd ever purchased with my own money besides a car. Yeah, so that was kind of a pain in the ass trying to chase this thing down for the better part of a day. But yeah, the gun show ended up closing like 20 minutes later for the day, and P&D wasn't going to be there on the Sunday, so that was literally the only chance I had to buy it for like 2 more weeks. And I went in to the store again 2 weeks later because I wanted to ask some advice or look at whatever else, and they told me that that was the only one that they had and the only one that they were expecting to get for quite a while. There was a backlog, or like they were back ordered for quite a while, so no one else in town had any. No one else was likely to get any for a while, so I lucked out. So like I would not have been able to pick one up unless I got it the way that I did. So that was nice. But yeah, that was a pain in the ass chasing that thing down, but I'm glad that I got it because, the fact that she's kind of heavy negates the recoil. So like this thing has no barrel rise. Like rifles in Canada have a restriction to 5 rounds. It's super dumb, but pistols are restricted to 10 rounds. It's super dumb. And people have tried to explain to me why, but I just don't get it. I just don't get it. But it is possible. Like there are pistols out there built out of AR-15 platforms or built out of XCR platforms that are designated as pistols and are designated as restricted, and they are legally able to take 10-round magazines. These magazines are exactly the same as the 5-round magazines for the XCR rifle, and because they're labeled as pistol magazines, it's kind of an exception. It's because you can use, just because a magazine is designated for a pistol, if it fits without modification in a rifle, you can use a 10-round rifle or pistol magazine in a rifle with 10 rounds in it, and no one can say a goddamn thing about it. It's a legal loophole that has been exploited by so many people, and it's great that it exists. It's a pain in the ass, though, that a lot of people will give you crap for it when you're at the range. If they hear you shooting 10 rounds out of a rifle, they'll give you crap for it. I've gotten crap for it. All I do is I just pull out the thing. Pistol magazine, says it right there. It's perfectly legal. F you. But yeah, they still give you crap. So I would always try to limit my use of the 10-round magazines when I'm at a range by myself, or with someone who's not likely to care. No sense in upsetting people or getting people riding your ass or whatever. But God, that thing is such a fun rifle to shoot. And when you're doing that with 10 rounds and you just do bang, 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 like rapid fire, just for fun, like there's no barrel rise. That is one advantage to the heavy front end on that thing, is you got no barrel rise. So you can keep that thing on target through like all 10 rounds and not have like any recoil. Whereas my AR, being much lighter, if it would actually fire properly, on the rare occasion I can actually get it to cycle correctly. While the 223 round doesn't have a lot of recoil in general, with that thing weighing about half as much as this thing does, you'd notice a lot more recoil, a lot more barrel rise with that thing than with this. So that's a big plus. a big check mark in the plus category for this thing. And I'm gonna miss it more than any other thing I'm selling. I'm gonna miss that rifle a lot. But like I said, it should go to a nice home, someone that's gonna feed it, because I sure can't. Because that's what sucks about the Edmonton area is, there's a lot of shooting ranges around here. There's, I think 3 indoor shooting ranges that they're good for, rentals or pistol shooting only. Like, there's no long range rifle shooting. But there's like half a dozen rifle ranges in the greater Edmonton area, but they all have very limited membership. And if you're not there on like day one when they open up registration at the for the next year, then you're screwed. If you can't get in, then you're screwed. I mean, I want to take one of these things out to an outdoor, long range, like someplace with like 300, 400, 500 yards, like where I used to shoot back home. My range that I would go to on the Malahat, just outside of Victoria, like it had a 600-yard shooting, like rifle range. It had a separate pistol range with like the rails, like you see in the movies. The hang your target, press a button, it like slides out to the end. You can set it to 50 or 100 yards or whatever. And it even had a separate archery range. You may remember a couple of videos that I shot of me with my crossbow, which I also miss, and I wish I still had that thing. It's back home somewhere, and I would love to take it out for a day and then sell it. But yeah, like that range was great. Like it had unlimited membership, but it was a huge facility. Like it had like 30 shooting benches. So there was no real limit on the number of people that could go there. Like some days on the weekends, you'd go and there'd be 25 people all lined up, all shooting all at the same time. So trying to get a 5-minute ceasefire to go out and set up your targets was a pain in the ass. But it's a great facility, and I wish there was a place like that here. But yeah, every place around here, like, yeah, sorry, we were only taking 100 people this year. We're only taking 50 people this year. Ugh, it's infuriating. Not that I would go shooting all that often, I mean, even if I did have a range membership, I'd probably only go once a month, but if even that often. But, I want to take this thing out. I want to feed this thing some lead. I want to blow some 22 rounds through my 1022. It's infuriating, honestly. But anyway, whatever. I've rambled enough. If you are a resident of Canada and you have any interest in the weapons that I have for sale, my XCR or my Mark 23, or either of the other 2 pistols that I haven't talked about at length, or my 1022 takedown, take a look at, if you remember, my ads on CanadianGunNuts.com, I believe. There'll be a link down there somewhere. Or message me on Twitter. You can find me right there. If like I said, if you're in Canada only, preferably in the Edmonton area, I'd really rather not have to ship if I don't have to, because the legal hassles of putting firearms in the mail, more than I want to deal with. If I can just meet you in person, hand it off to you, great. I'd really rather do it that way. But yeah, if you message me on Twitter, send me post a comment on this video, or if you're a member of Canadian Gun Nuts, by all means, take a look at my ads. Private message me there. I'm under the name Face Forward. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed. This will probably be the last shooting video I do for a very long time. hopefully it'll be the last time I own some of these. As much as I'm going to miss them, it'll be certainly nice to have that money freed up. So, whatever. As for whatever else is going on, I've been off all this week, and I've been a lazy piece of crap. I have not gotten any work done on my Cylon Raider. I've been playing this new city simulator, a SimCity type game called Cities Skylines for the last 3 days, and I can't get enough of it. So yeah, that's kind of been eating up all my free time. But I do want to get it done. The weather's nice. I might try and get some paint done on it today or tomorrow. I do have some stuff I got to do today, but nothing too pressing. So that's about all there is to say for that for today. So thank you everyone out there for watching, and happy shooting.